Aloha and welcome to Reflections on Interpretation, talking story with guides and interpreters. I am Tim Merriman, your host, coming to you from the Big Island of Hawaii. And today I'm delighted to have as my guest Toby Merriman, my son, who is the Assistant Director of Center for Virtual Expression at Southern Illinois University, my alma mater. Toby, we've talked about AI at length before in a podcast, and I want to go some new places today, if you don't mind. Remind us what you do at Center for Virtual Expression.
The shortest way to say it is I provide a path to modernizing curriculum, classrooms, courses, research projects. We sort of help our faculty and students adapt to VR, AI, and video game tech.
Cool. Well, in thinking about what we do in interpretation, we say we're trying to make intellectual and emotional connections. Do you think AI changes that for us in any way, or what audiences expect?
For you all, no, I doubt it will change your mission or your function or your goals. I think whenever some new type of technology comes along, it has a certain degree of disruption. It changes the game to a certain extent, and I think AI is a big one. I think it's going to change a lot of things, like the internet did, like computers did. But the mission is still the same, to get the public to care about a place or a thing or a historical incident, whatever. I don't see it as changing who you guys are, what you do really at all.
Yeah, I guess I don't either. I wanted to share with you what happened to Lisa and I this last March. We were in Rwanda doing training, and we went to the Dian Fossey Gorilla Center, and it's
Mhm.
really a wonderful interpretive center, only about 300 or 400 yards from the beautiful mountain resort we stay at when we're there. And they had a VR chair that you get up in the chair and you put on a VR headset, and they kind of fly you up. You walk a long ways to get to the mountain gorillas in reality, but they fly you up very quickly and you land kind of amongst a family of gorillas. And the director of the facility kind of goes along up in the air and interprets what's going on. The other thing that's kind of unique about it is as the gorillas come close to you, they bump you, and they've got the chair designed so it shakes like you've been actually bumped. And I found it really interesting. I've been up with the gorillas 3 times, and even though I had, uh, it took me back because it really felt like
Yeah.
visually. It was that 3D surround thing that made it feel like that. And I thought, for somebody who's never done it before and they're kind of agonizing over, am I willing to spend $1,500 to go spend an hour with mountain gorillas, that it might be that tantalizing experience that gets them to go.
It's the slippery slope to going up on the side of a mountain, as it were. It's the VR technology. If you look at two-dimensional pictures of it, if you're looking at a JPEG of it or a website with pictures of it, you are getting 10% of it. VR, even when it looks hokey or cartoony or whatever, when you get in the helmet and you're looking around and you're seeing that environment, it feels more immersive. And then you add things like the haptic chair. This all goes towards tricking our brain into getting out of our existence and into a different one momentarily and experiencing there. And that's kind of the magic of it. We have classrooms now that are going to teach almost exclusively in VR, and the only equipment you'll need for the class is a VR helmet, and they'll travel all over the place. So the technology is coming along nicely and still being developed very, kind of slowly and steadily. I always tell people are upset about AI because it came on really fast and really strong, kind of out of nowhere, whereas VR has steadily gotten better and better, and it's quite good now.
Yeah, I have to confess, they showed it to me about 4 years ago at a training event I was teaching at Hawaii Community College, and they were sharing that with us. And of course, the really unique thing about it for a teacher is you can take a whole classroom if they've got the VR headsets into
Right.
Tutankhamun's tomb, and look around, or down into a bat cave, places that you probably would never go with a class. And
Yeah. And sometimes it's because people are afraid to go. Sometimes they can't afford to go. And so you bring some amount of the experience to the visitor. You bring it's weird. You bring the park to the visitor, which is counterintuitive, but it could have a wonderful life there in advocacy.
yeah, as you know, I used to work for Bat Conservation International, and I would take people down to Bracken Cave near San Antonio and San Marcos, Texas, and you see 20 million Mexican free-tailed bats emerge from the cave at dusk, and it's an amazing experience. It would be wonderful to take people virtually down into the thing. I mean, it's such a rich methane environment. You don't really want to do it in terms of person.
Yeah.
And
Well, so far we don't have smell in VR, and I'm kind of thankful for that. I know there's places that are developing it, but
this really was a later question in my whole thing, but I want to address it right up front. You and I
okay.
can say to people, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. What do you mean by that?
Well, these conversations are happening. Should we adopt this technology? Should we fund this technology? Should we allow this technology? Should we legislate it? And that conversation, if conservationists, environmentalists, if interpreters, if educators, if my faculty at academia all turn up their nose and go, I don't like the look of this, I'm staying out of it, then you're not going to be part of that conversation that discusses data center energy and water use, that discusses ethics of training data and what can we train on, what should we not train on, and the economic impact. This is like, again, like the internet and like the computer, going to be kind of a worldwide thing and a worldwide conversation. And I don't think there is a profession on earth that it will not touch to some extent. So if you put your head in the sand, when you pull it out later, you may be surprised to find how much things have changed in ways you don't like. Whereas if you're in the room fighting for it, yelling at your congressperson, say, hey, don't let AI run amok over here, or don't build that data center right next to my favorite park, or whatever. You're involved and you can steer the technology towards good, public good.
Yeah, I always think that the next student in our classroom is going to be using it. The next trainee in any training program is going to be using it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so out there and so available that the likelihood that the person that competes for the next job with us or promotion is not going to know about it. They're likely to be somewhat skilled at it. If we're going to sit back and go, as I've heard people say, it's evil, it's terrible, it's going to do awful things. I go, okay, so it's going to do awful things, so I'm not going to do good things with it to try to offset that.
Yep.
Uh, I just don't get it.
My most stubborn faculty say those things. And so far, I'm proud of them because whenever I lay this guilt trip on them, they always respond. I say, do you think our students will be asked about AI in their job interviews?
Yeah.
They all go, yeah, of course. Then what are we doing if we're not teaching that? If we're not teaching it as some component of the class? And there's some classes where it's not valuable at all, it's not destructive at all, it's a minimal impact. Cool. We're going to identify those because the university is a diverse place. The park and museum and public activity system that interpreters live in is a very diverse place. There's some places where you might be right. It isn't going to be that big of a deal to you, but it's going to be a little deal. And in other places, it could be devastating if you don't understand it early and head it off at the pass and kind of anticipate some of the problems you could have.
I'm going to confess that I do not understand gamification. And yet I know that as a youngster you were playing Dungeons and Dragons and that you as an adult you continue. And I have no idea what that is. And I'm not sure the implications of gamification, what they have on education or interpretation. Could you share
But
that?
you do, I mean, you don't understand gamification, but you do understand every principle within it. This is it's experiential learning. It's sort of like we discussed in VR. When you put on that VR helmet, you were not actually on the side of the mountain in Rwanda. You were in a VR helmet, feeling like you were a little bit. That's gamification because it removes you from your own shoes and it puts you in another place, somebody else's shoes, somebody else's situation. So gamification removes you from yourself momentarily. It's been used for therapy, for veterans with PTSD, for other purposes like this, for role playing, to get out of your own heads. My history department teaches it, reacting to the past, where we play a game where we are pretending to be in John Brown at John Brown's gang at Harper's Ferry, and we're trying to think about what we're seeing, what we're smelling, what we're hearing, what's going on. And my first foray into gamified learning was I made a game that you play through where you are the Hawaiians when Captain Cook visited, because you're the one that told me the story of how they killed him.
Yep.
And the when I presented that to our literature and history department, they loved it. They says this is experiential learning. These kids will never forget the facts of the time and the place and the events and the names and the ship. And it's because we let them live in that place and that time for a few minutes rather than have them take a quiz on it or read a page on it.
That's cool. You made that relevant for me just immediately. And as dense as I can be about some of this, and I can be because when you use the term gamification, I'm thinking of pinball machines and uh,
Yeah,
video games. But in truth, part of my doctoral work in the Department of Communications at SIU, where you work, uh, was a course called improvisation.
yeah,
And in that improvisation course, we would start the classroom with the teacher saying, "You're in 18th century Great Britain. Your family is starving. There's a famine going on because you live in the the Northern Ireland area, and whatever the conflict was, they would set up the conflict, and then you would identify who you were as a character, and you would talk through it, and the feeling from it always was, wow, I never got inside that story before. Uh,
yep.
Being one of the characters in a drama about it brings it home and makes it personal. And I didn't think of that as gamification.
It's a form of it. I think it's the reason people still love live theater because you feel like you are at the story. You're in the story observing. Or people love acting in theater because they want to be Macbeth for 2 hours. They want to live in someone else's experience. And it's inherently educational to just live a few minutes as somebody else.
We're now seeing all of these incredible platforms that can create a character who can speak, and they're totally
Mhm.
AI. It's not a real picture of a real person. And in some cases, it's being used to simulate the face and voice of a living politician or
Yeah.
deceased scientist or politician or monarch or whatever. What do you think the ethical constraints are of that? Where are we going with that? Because we can make someone say things they would never say.
Absolutely. The biggest problem we face, and this is why I personally, who grew up around interpreters, I want them in the room. I know that they're ethical, they're public-minded, they're long-term thinkers, and they like to connect emotionally on valuable history and places. And Congress, conversely, is a place that is about bureaucracy or money or procedure. It's very difficult to get anything done there. And yet, in the first year of ChatGPT, when 11 Labs came out, which was a voice AI, someone immediately took it, copied then President Biden's voice, and had it robocalling people, telling them don't vote. And Congress moved swifter than the wind and banned that. So all the AI companies immediately knew GPT, 11 Labs, Claude, they all knew you cannot impersonate a political candidate because that affected Congress. And so the more people call and write letters and vote along these lines, the more it will affect Congress in all these other ways. But they can and will legislate the right way. And that was the right move. They shouldn't have been using the technology to lie to people. And it was immediately banned. And you couldn't use it. And he didn't just ban it for Democrats. He banned it. You could not use 11 Labs to impersonate Trump or any Republican candidates either.
Well, when I think about the ethical constraints that go with this, when you create a character from the past and you recreate them in some AI way, as long as you try to do the right thing, I don't think the perfect should be the enemy of the good. Interpreters ethically are always trying to be accurate, and yet the world around us of the internet is making no effort to be accurate or kind or
Well,
anything. So.
that is a big problem, but it's an old problem and it's not going away. I really hope that when the internet got big, that it would combat misinformation, but it amplifies everything, including incorrect stuff. When I researched the Captain Cook thing, you and I talked about it and you kind of gave me the Hawaiian perspective on it. And I went online and watched about 8 documentaries about it. And all the British ones painted it in a very favorable way for Captain Cook, and all the Hawaiian ones were just very defensive about being mistreated by the visitors and all these things. And when I looked at Drunk History, which is a YouTube channel where the storyteller has a few beers and then tries to tell a story. It's sort of like if you have a couple glass of wine with an interpreter. Drunk History was very, very much more accurate and along the Hawaiian side of the story. They really researched it very well. And so it can be satire, it can be comedy. And if there's valuable information in there and a message is conveyed, then it's an effective medium.
Well, and we talk about that in interpretation, interpreting multiple perspectives, recognizing that the point of view of Hawaiians when Cook was killed here versus the point of view of Cook's shipmates and later the British people when they learned would have been entirely different and for good reason. But ideally, a lot of what we do in interpretation is try to kind of reveal that deeper understanding. I think we worry a lot that AI gamification VR transplants the need for young people to have real experiences. Do you think that's a danger?
Not at all. It's hopefully a gateway into a larger world. Like you with the Gorilla VR thing. If you're on the fence about whether or not you should go, this is dipping a toe in,
Yeah.
playing a game about it or watching a play about it or watching a documentary about it. Then you're like, you know what? I want to really go see Yosemite. I'm tired of seeing it on TV and hearing about it. I want to see it in person. And that's how you get people interested. And it's also an accessibility thing as far as income. Not everybody has the money to travel. Traveling in the United States is one level of expense. Traveling internationally is a whole other ball game. And you'll just have more visitors if you can reach people on multiple levels. Yes, we want you here in person. Yes, we want you on the website. Yes, we'd love you to get on our YouTube. Yes, we'd love you to join us in our VR space, and we'll give you a VR tour of the facility. We want your attention and your thought and your contribution any way we can get it.
I want to be encouraged about that. I mean, part of what we're, one of the things I often say to parks people is you'll hear a park ranger at Grand Canyon complain that people pull in on a tour bus, they get off and take 10 pictures, spend 15 minutes, get back on the bus and leave, and they've been to Grand Canyon. And I always like to say, you know what? It gets 4 or 5 million visitors a year. I really don't want them going down Bright Angel Trail and
Yeah,
turning our most remote wilderness areas
yeah,
into Madison Avenue in New York City with
yeah.
the people. So, and yet I want them as advocates. I want them to show those pictures to their relatives and get excited about Grand Canyon.
And you guys know, interpreters know that there are visitors that all you're ever going to get is they're going to get off the bus and take a photo, and they don't want to go camping. They don't want to go whitewater rafting. They don't want to hike down a difficult trail or hike back up it. The Captain Cook Trail is formidable. Um,
Really is.
and you get what you get out of people. And you just, like you told me last time, I said, oh, interpreters are like educators. And you say, oh, we don't have that kind of time. We need to connect quickly and meaningfully and make memories in people. And in some people, that's going to be a long stay. In some people, that's going to be a photo that they brag about to people at work, that they stick up on the fridge or whatever. They're taking you with them in some form, and you got to call that a win.
Do you think we actually have the ability with some of these new things to inspire stewardship, to get them to think about the world differently? Because it's part of what we teach that interpretation is here to try to get somebody to take a step up from their current value system to being advocates for parks, zoos, museums, nature centers, aquariums, historic sites. Do you think it has that value?
It has as much potential for that as the internet does, as computers do, as photography does. We invent these technologies with rarely ever do they have a specific purpose. Sometimes it's military, like the internet, but we invent things and we find things scientifically and we go, well, this is terrible for the thing I built it for, but it's amazing for this other thing. So we will find ways to use this technology in constructive ways. And I know that there are ways we can use it to bring the next generation into stewardship. And we had to think of them, we had to find them with social media, but I see the park services are some of the most beloved and funniest and most charming TikTok and Instagram and YouTube short accounts on the internet. They're very funny or very beautiful. They use the animals. They make you just love the animals. They make you want to see the place. That didn't happen immediately. Social media came out, and park rangers, park managers probably went, well, that's got nothing to do with me. And now they're out here making hilarious YouTube shorts about burrowing owls making funny faces, and they get a couple million people clicking it. Some of those, several thousand of those people are going to go, you know what? What is this place? What's it about? What's there? Maybe I should go there for my next trip. I need a vacation. You're reaching people, and you're mass communicating. And so we'll find a way.
Thinking as we get into this, I mean, you and I have been teaching a AI and interpretation seminar online, and I'm happy to say the one we're doing September 25th just sold out, and we limit it to 14 people per thing, which gives us a grid of 4 by 4 for the Zoom thing, which you can still get to a little bit acquainted with the other people in the course. But
Sure.
we are doing another course October 3rd, noon Hawaii time, which would be like 3 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Mountain time, 5 p.m. Central time, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And would invite anybody that wants to take that to join us for that. But we're going to do something a little different with that. And we've talked about it a little bit. We're going to do some workshop kind of activities. And all I mean by that is instead of just telling people about the AI platforms, we're going to give them some tasks to do and have them do them during the class.
As soon as I started teaching this technology to our teachers, to our students, I realized that it was way more effective to just pull up ChatGPT or pull up Midjourney or pull up 11 Labs and work with the audience. Give me a prompt. Let's try something. Let's break it. Let's figure out what its limits are. When I demonstrated generative art AI to our painting and art history and graphic designers, I learned more about the problems with it and the strengths of it and the limitations of it in 1 hour with them than I'd learned in weeks on my own because they're experts in that field. So part of the reason I love working with it directly with interpreters is they have their own perspective on it. It is a generalist technology that is potentially useful to everyone, but so far I've rarely been able to predict exactly how it was going to be useful. And then People show me. They have their own ideas. And they know their own workflow and they know their own problems of their profession. And you bring those and we see if we can make it 5% better with this technology. And sometimes we can.
I'm really aware that your mentor at your center moved on to the SIU Medical School and
He
has
got a bigger budget, is what he did.
got a bigger budget.
I I don't begrudge him that at all. And I'm
Real
still working
quickly,
with him.
what are some of the kinds of things they're doing with it?
He now works for the Springfield Surgery Department for SIU Medical School, and they want to use VR and experiential learning on their med students. They want to create a simulated environment. They've dabbled in this with AI avatars and other things. You would be surprised to learn how old and static med school training tools are. We hear about how rigorous it is. We hear about how expensive, how long it takes to do. It's a huge undertaking. And yet some of their core tools that every doctor you know had to use are just primitive. And when we have shown their med students these new tools that allow them to practice bedside manner by diagnosing an AI, it seemed silly at first, like, oh, this will be good for testing. But the students said, no, this is sit ups and push ups for talking to people. I want to do this 20 times repeatedly by myself with no one watching and practice my hello, how are you? What brings you to the doctor today? Because that's the sort of thing they're afraid of. These people aren't afraid of memorizing zillions of facts. They're great at that. And so part of what he's doing at what Pinckney Benedict is doing up at Springfield is adding an experiential and gamified VR learning component to med school. And the theory, the tagline they use is better training tools make better doctors. They just want better doctors. And so do we all.
Yeah, the other day, after kind of thinking about that whole process, I went on ChatGPT and said, give me a 250 word narrative on mitochondria and why they're so important to human cells and make it med school level information. And it
Yeah.
would be this very complicated thing. And I've learned a lot about mitochondria and through my own
Mhm.
2 degrees in the biological sciences. And so it was fascinating. But then I turned around and said, please give this back to me as an interpretive program for fifth graders with a central theme. Use metaphors that would make sense to a fifth grader in the United States. And it
Yeah.
came back with this brilliant program. And then I said, now give me some interactive games I can use that will actually get kids to play with this and engage with it at a deeper level.
Yep.
And it did that. And we're talking in seconds. I mean, it's really
Yep.
kind of cool.
And you could use, if you are an educator or an interpreter or whatever, you could get a coding AI and say, make me a simple video game to put on our website that illustrates why you don't want to litter in parks where there's bears. Uh, pretty, pretty quick turnaround on simple projects like that.
Well, and the other day you turned me on to another thing, Gamma Dot app, and
Oh, yeah.
that will design a PowerPoint or a
Yeah.
Google presentation. In 3 minutes, I had a presentation I would normally spend 3 or 4 hours coming up with. And what I did was spend another hour editing it, making it, refining it to a level that
Yep.
sometimes I don't have the time to get to that. And I just,
That's a common theme. The common theme with GPT is if you were writing a book, you would tell GPT what I'm writing the book about, who I am, why I'm qualified, any other books I wrote about it, and go, now lay out an order of chapters that you think would be a good idea. What topics, what order should I put these topics in? It's great at the skeleton of a project. It's great at outlining and planning. And then you still have to be the content. You still have to be the primary creator. And like that with the PowerPoint, it's great to go throw me together this presentation and then I'm going to fix it up.
I guess that's the reason I feel interpreters, guides will not become redundant in a modern workforce is I
Yeah.
think people in tourism, in um, visiting parks, zoos, museums, whatever, still expect to meet other people. And
Yeah.
we may come up with some absolutely fascinating robots that do things in these settings. I don't think it's
Yep.
going to replace person to person communication and the creativity of an individual to bring something alive at a level that maybe a simulation will not do.
You know, my one of my favorite examples of that, and what you asked about earlier, can this be used for advocacy? Can we use this for good? Is the chess example. And it's a simplification. Chess is a competitive strategy game that in the 90s, there were maybe 100,000 ranked players on the planet. It was a niche thing. It was considered too hard for most people to learn. Nobody took the time. And then AI beat Gary Kasparov, and he thought, oh, well, this is over. No one's ever going to play chess again. And he points out that 15 years later, there are 2 million people registered, or 2 million people playing, and 1.2 million registered in the competitive league, playing against each other, playing against humans. And yes, the iPhone chess app can beat any one of them, and nobody cares at all. They want to play against each other. They want human connection. They want that competitiveness. And I think that example, while very simple and it doesn't translate to everything, is the model for what we can do with this technology because the chess world is using it to teach people to play chess. They're using it to connect people who want to play chess. The internet, the computer, and AI have made chess more popular than it's ever been on this planet. Not vastly more. And I'm not sure if AI will ever be an art form, but it's getting the same reception that all new technologies get, which is a mix of reckless, thoughtless adoption and hatred.
Yeah, and for me, it's when I hear someone say it's going to do terrible, evil things, stay away from it. I go,
Yeah.
you're not going to try to do good things
Yeah.
because it will do bad things. The internet does terrible things. It
Yeah.
provides a platform for people that are stealing, that are enticing children into dangerous situations. So I think we have to do better. We have to use new technologies in thoughtful ways. And that's, by the way, just to mention, for anybody who's thinking about joining us in this upcoming October 3 course or any future course we do, we introduced them pretty quickly to a variety of different platforms, and you're the expert on it. I don't pretend to be. But if you're out there looking at Notebook, Claude, Gemini, Chat GPT, and trying to understand what does it do well, what does it not do so well, we'll cover that sort of thing. Same thing with Cursor, Gamma, Midjourney, Night Cafe, any of these programs that do graphics or can do website design or can write code. And part of what I appreciate about your role and what you're involved in is you spend a lot of time on this and you take us pretty deep pretty quickly and help us understand what it will and won't do.
It's an incredible technology. As you know, you were there. I was fascinated by the internet, by computers, and by more eventually. Initially, I'm always fascinated by, oh, the technology's cool. This is neat. This has never been done. Very cool. That gets boring. And our relationship with the technology eventually is what holds my interest. Video games were kind of simple and shallow and dumb in the 80s and 90s. And then something like Halo comes along and you find yourself sobbing at the end of it like you've watched a great movie. And I'm like, this is transition from just being a slot machine that makes the numbers go by to being a good book. And we do that. We tend to find funky uses and quick, expedient, money-making uses for technology right away, but eventually we expand on it and we do things. You get it in the right hands, you get enough people to try it, and you'll start to see masterpieces made.
No,
He's decided,
I approve of pet bombing. I have
decided to be part of the.
I have Akamai, who you know well, our little Yorkie cross rescue dog that's underneath me right now, saying it's time for my 3 o'clock treat. It's only 2 o'clock here. So he sees
I
me
noticed, yeah,
he sees me on Zoom. He know it's time to start acting up and maybe get a treat early.
I'm familiar with Akamai. He moves up the schedule on you all the time.
Well, let me just say to our listeners or watchers on YouTube that we hope you'll join us for one of these activities that we're doing online. And one of the things I'm going to try to challenge people who sign up for this next course is come there with your questions already in hand. Even come with a narrative you've written or a project you're working on, and you want some suggestions for what platform might help you make it even more creative and more engaging and more inspirational for your audiences. And I think we can do that. And of course, the part I'm trying to do is translate, well, how do we use that in interpretation? And you're there with the skills and knowledge related to the broader field of AI gamification and VR. So,
And I would say to your folks, if you're skeptical, bring that. If you're angry, concerned, fearful, bring that. Let's talk about it. Spoiler alert, I will probably, when you say I don't like AI because, is that true? I'll probably say, yes, it's true. All these complaints have a root of truth, including the water, the electrical, the ethical, the property rights. Part of what I want to say and why we invite the conversation is how we get to resolution. When we have these new technologies, we often have a fight. Sometimes it's a knockdown, drag out fight. Sometimes it's a discussion, leads to hopefully legislation, adoption. Sometimes the technology has to stay out of certain areas. And the only way we get there is by talking about it. And like I said, every one of the complaints about AI you've heard probably has a seed of truth, at least.
yeah, and part of what we really try to address is that broad range of concerns because let's face it, we're in our particular field, we're all very ethically concerned about environmental problems and
Of
about
course.
impact on society as well, history, our understanding of the world and of each other. So
Yep.
we want to talk about it all. Well, interpretivetraining.com is the website where you can register for one of these courses. And we'd love to meet new folks there. And if you have questions, timfmerriman@gmail.com is where you can get to me. Do you have an email they could get to you at?
Sure. I don't mind if your folks email me at tobiasmerriman@gmail.com.
And we are, I mean, part of the fun for Toby and I is I live in Hawaii, only about 5,500 miles from where he lives in Illinois. And we get together to chat and catch up and get acquainted with new people. And as he's mentioned, he grew up at a nature center, literally with uh, when he was 3 years old. Most of the people he was hanging out with were interpretive or environmental education staff at the nature center that were in their early 20s. So he's met a lot of you folks in a lot of different settings. And if you'd like to be on Reflections on Interpretation as a guest, also timfmerriman@gmail.com. Tell me what you want to talk about. We'll get together. Thanks for joining us today. I'd also like to thank Mark Stoffel for his beautiful music, mandolin music, and it's from his Coffee and Cake album. Buckminster Waltz is the one we use for an introduction and trailer. Thanks for joining us. Aloha.